Hello and welcome to Mutual Fund Sahi Hai, the outside view powered by Fantasy Akhada. Ananya is joining me a rather early end to what we had a fabulous global qualifiers in Zimbabwe. A new COVID variant has come out in Southern Africa, and that has caused the end, a premature end to the global qualifiers. A lot of things have changed to what we thought would have. Um, but before that, let's look at mutual funds.
इस इनिंग्स की शुरुआत म्यूचुअल फंड से कर। थोड़े थोड़े पैसे एसआईपी के जरिए म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कर। सही समय पे ये काम आए।
अरे फिर से म्यूचुअल फंड्स? सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Anandya, the sentiment is very high because a lot of things have changed. The entire global qualifiers is scrapped. Everything turned out to be on the rankings. And because a few nations did not have the ODI status, they never were in contention for that spot at the World Cup or the next round of the ICC Women's ODI Championship. Your first thoughts?
Look, like everyone else, I think hugely disappointed, gutted for the teams, especially for Thailand. My heart goes out to them because, they had sealed sealed 3 wins out of 4 in the group stage. They looked like they had one foot in, and they would qualify for that ICC ODI Championship, and a win against Ireland in that Super 6 stage, and they may have just snuck into the World Cup. You never know. So, look, I am. I guess it was I'm kind of lost for words at the moment. I'm gutted for the associate teams that kind of, like you said, were never in contention once the tournament was scrapped. It was hugely disappointing, but I'm still kind of just processing all this information at the moment.
Still processing that information, and it's been more than 24 hours that we've heard the news. That's how bad it is. Usually you would not see a Thailand women's cricket team getting trending on Twitter in India. That's how big the impact is. Everyone says that, women's cricket is not there, there's no growth, this, that. But the last I saw, 114,000 people in India were tweeting about Thailand yesterday. And that's how big the impact is. Everyone nearly knew that they would qualify in the top 5, if not for the World Cup at least. And the way I can't even imagine what would have been going on in the minds of in the Thailand camp. We saw a tweet from Natagan Chantam, a similar one that they did after the last qualifiers in Scotland. That all the 15 phones with a similar screensaver of the World Cup in 2022, and they must be a lot gutted just not to qualify because of one thing alone, which we've been discussing on each day, that why aren't the games given ODI status? Because Thailand, Netherlands, USA were the 3 teams which did not have the ODI status, and if it had to be on rankings, they never were in contention to be there or to play the next round. Ananya, as far as I know, this is the only sport where this kind of thing happens, full member, associate members, and you don't get a lot of chances. Whereas the motto of the ICC looks, or at least from a PR perspective, looks like globalizing the game.
Yeah, look, it is extremely disappointing. And we've had conversations around this. Is it really a World Cup when there are only 8 teams involved? Or, if it's a T20 World Cup when there are 10 teams involved? Is it really a World Cup when you have so few nations actually involved in a tournament like that? And, to think that we have to wait until I think it's 2029 for the ODI World Cup to become a 10-team affair. I think 2030 for the T20 World Cup to be expanded to 12 teams. Um, I think that rate needs to be accelerated. I think we need to start expanding the game a little more. And as far as the ODI status or the status of these games is concerned, I think there was a lot of confusion around this. The first day Thailand were kind of celebrating their first ODI win. Then we had USA the following day kind of tweeting that we've become the 21st ODI nation in women's cricket. And there was just so much confusion around the status of these games. And I think that came down to a press release where, it wasn't worded very well, or I think everyone assumed that these were given international status, which meant they were ODIs. And even on the ICC website, you saw that ODI tag next to the scorecard. So there was just so much confusion around it. And it's really unfortunate. I think the way things have panned out, it feels like a bit of a farce, because at the end of it, the matches that actually happened didn't count for anything. So it's really disappointing that way, that when you look back and you look at the tournament, it was pretty much like only 4 teams actually had a realistic, 5 teams actually had a realistic chance of getting anywhere. And I think it's just down to the fact that administrators have kind of messed up, and I feel like maybe this will give them an opportunity to go back and look at these playing conditions, because these are situations that they probably never thought that would happen. You don't go into a tournament assuming it would be cancelled or something like that. So I think these are things that need to be revisited, especially considering the times we're living in, when everything, we have to be much more flexible and things like that. I think this is an opportunity, hopefully, for them to go back and look at these conditions and figure out how we can change them, because I think it's extremely I think it's more demoralizing than anything else for teams to come into a tournament like this knowing that they have a realistic chance of qualifying at least in the top 5, like you said, and then to be told that, hey, we didn't even consider you because you don't have ODI status. It is a bit of an elitist game, I suppose, in that way, and I think those things have to be changed. We have to find ways to expand the game much quicker, or grow the game a lot quicker than it is being done at this point. And if that means introducing more teams in the World Cup, so be it, because you need to give these teams motivation. Right now, if I were in that Thailand camp, I would be wondering, okay, what am I doing for the next 4 years? Because I know there is a T20 World Cup, but I don't have a fixed calendar. So what am I going to do to motivate myself over the next few years? It is extremely demoralizing.
And that's where my point comes. Are the Indias of the world, South Africas of the world, England's, Australias of the world going to play against Thailand in the next 4 years?
Well, look, you'd hope that they do. I think one thing that has been or needs to be done is that full member nations kind of need to understand their role in helping these teams develop. I remember seeing a tweet recently about how Ireland had played the last ODI series in 2018. And look, it's through no fault of their own. It's not like they're not asking other teams to come and play whenever they tour England. It's just unfortunate that full members, for some reason, don't feel the need to extend that helping hand. And I think that, hopefully the Indias, the Australias, the South Africas of the world, even if they don't send their strongest teams, or they send emerging teams and things like that, I think that will at least help develop the cricket there. But at some point, they do need to send their best international teams as well. They do need to, I guess, extend the helping hand and help these teams develop. So on that front, I'm extremely happy for Ireland who have made the cut, because they've been around for such a long time, almost begging for, some opportunity to play consistently, to play more. I'm thinking of Laura Delaney in that 2018 T20 World Cup press conference where she broke down in tears and said, "We're not contracted. We don't have opportunities to play. This is their opportunity to play, and hopefully they take it." I know they're getting a lot of flack on social media, but I think this is a team that's, waited for a long time for this opportunity. And, for that, I'm very chuffed for them.
Laura Delaney, Gabriel Lewis, there's no fault of yours. And whatever flack you're getting is completely nonsense, because you completely deserve to be there in that next round of ICC Women's ODI Championship. And it is completely fair that you play against those 9 teams. But the discussion is more that why aren't more teams being included? What the kind of playing conditions we have? Did anyone know that, oh, okay, these are the playing conditions if the global qualifiers are not happening? If that was the case, shouldn't all the teams have given the ODI status at least 2 years back, so that they could have played more ODIs between themselves and at least had a chance to say that, oh, okay, we can qualify or not qualify, like Sri Lanka had, but they didn't play any matches in the last 18 months. That was completely fair. It was the board's mistake. But I'm going to bring another topic, which is a lot of fans, men's cricket fans, may feel wrong, bad, sad about this particular thing. Is a lot of the male factor dominating the women's game. Is that the case? Because the way I come is Afghanistan women's team has got the ODI or the full member test status because of their men's team. Whereas Thailand, their men's team is not that strong. It is the women's team which is strong, and they do not have any status. Should the status be based on gender, like women getting their own status and men getting their own status, or the men's status influencing the women's game in any country of the world?
Look, I think this is one of the things that I was thinking about, and I think it would be interesting if the ICC ever considered looking at these games separately and not having. I think if there were a way to look at the women's game separate from the men's game and say that qualifying conditions, especially for World Cups, the qualifying conditions for both teams, for both gender, are different. And I say this because of the examples of Thailand and Brazil and boards that see more sense, I suppose, or more opportunity in investing in their women's teams, because there are more realistic chances for them to get ahead in the women's game and things like that. I think for that, just to look into maybe a possibility of separating those qualifying conditions, or any conditions for that matter. I think this full member status, I understand, why it is the way it is, that you will only award men's teams full member status if they have a women's team, which of course is not the case with Afghanistan, but that's a completely different topic. But I understand that, but I just think it would make sense to divide that, especially now that the ICC have a women's cricket committee. So they've separated that part of it and said, okay, fine, we understand that this game needs people to look at it exclusively and figure out what needs to be changed, what can be done. So just in that same vein, that you figure out that you treat both of them differently, because like we're seeing, different countries are investing in different teams. So Thailand and Brazil are investing in their women's teams, whereas the bigger nations like the Indias and the other countries are investing probably more in their men's teams. So I think that's something that they could consider, and it would be nice if the status, or the international status, or the full member status of the women's teams didn't depend on the men, because as we're seeing right now, it's extremely unfair, because I don't think it reflects in the way that they play at all, because Thailand as an associate member, I think played out of their skin through these 3 matches or 4 matches that they played. So they played like a full member, deserve to be treated like a full member nation. So yeah, I think that needs to be given some thought.
The governing body needs to take a thought about this particular thing. Otherwise, Thailand will never become a full member because their investment in the women's game is much more than their investment or the growth of their men's game. Let me bring another pointer. Do you feel did ICC have any other choice? I've read a lot of suggestions. One of them saying that just like you had a qualifying round of matches in UAE, you could have done the qualifying round of matches in New Zealand, say between 15th of Feb and 28th of Feb. Do you feel that, oh, okay, you're already carrying 8 teams, you have to only carry 6 more teams, probably play with them for 15 odd days. There is a Rugby World Cup in New Zealand, so I don't think so that problem the New Zealand government would create that, oh, okay, we're not having 6 more teams. Completely, that is something that could have been thought about. The other line of thought we had about the ICC Women's ODI Championship, can we grow it from 10 to 12 nations already? Is that a huge problem that, oh, okay, a team cannot play 11 series in the next 3 years? That's like less than 4 series a year. If India can play, why can't Ireland play 4 series a year? Why can't Thailand play 4 series a year? These were 2 options that I saw. Do you want to add something on this, or do you have any other options that ICC could or can still do right?
Look, I think that excuse me, that first round concept was, look, it is appealing. I think it's something that could have potentially been discussed, but look, I feel like ICC were in a no-win situation at this point. And what this whole thing has revealed is that the playing conditions or the qualifying conditions are ridiculous, especially if you don't, like you said, award member other countries ODI international full member status beforehand. The qualifying conditions are ridiculous. But the first round thing for me is, again, it's the New Zealand government gets involved. There's so many different factors that you have to take into consideration. And with that tournament already being organized, they've kind of charted out their plans for it. Was there enough space to maneuver this into that? I'm not sure. It would have been great, I think, for them to have been magnanimous enough to say, hey, let's expand the championship to 12 teams. That would have been wonderful. That probably would have, made up for the farce that was the qualifier. But again, the way the ICC has worked, or the way things have grown in the game, which is very, very slow, it would have been, I guess, against their nature to have added 4 teams all of a sudden. So I mean, it would be wonderful if they kind of go back, especially after all the hue and cry that's happened over the last couple of days, if they go back and maybe rethink this, because there is still time. That the cycle only starts after the 2022 World Cup, so after April. So you still have time to go and figure out whether something like this is possible. How the teams can fit that into their schedule. It's just 2 additional series. So is that possible? I think from the outside looking in, you feel like it's a no-brainer, but we don't know what goes on in those discussions. But hopefully that's something that they consider, because it just feels very, very wrong that some of the teams weren't given a fair chance because they didn't have ODI status.
So Bangladesh, West Indies, and Pakistan qualify for that World Cup, while Ireland, deserving, and Sri Lanka play the next round of ICC Women's ODI Championship alongside these 8 nations. This will be the first time we'll regularly see Bangladesh and Ireland locking horns against the top teams. But we had a good day at the qualifiers, where there were 2 matches that took place and 1 match which was cancelled. The release says that there was a person in the Sri Lankan camp that got COVID. Hence, they couldn't play the Sri Lanka versus West Indies game. That's the reason that game was cancelled. But Thailand registered their 3rd win of the tournament in 4 games. Ananya, you would like to start there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we said that in the preview for for the day as well, that Thailand would probably demolish USA, and they went on to do that. Nataya Bhuchatam again came in 4 cheap wickets for her, and a pretty easy win for Thailand. I think USA were rolled out for 93. They never quite looked like they would post anything challenging. And it was great to see Natakan Chantam come out and score some runs. I think, while I was watching that Thailand chase of 94, the only thing, because the ICC had already released the news of, these teams have qualified, these teams haven't. I kept wondering what is going on in those minds. How are they able to kind of focus on the task at hand? Because I'm sure it would have been extremely difficult for a team as passionate as Thailand, or for anyone to have gone out and focused on winning that game. It would have been extremely difficult, but, they were professional. They were very clinical in their chase, got it done, came out, and, probably would have sobbed their hearts out. But it was wonderful to see Thailand, I suppose, in some ways sign off on a high, but it would have been a bittersweet one.
Chantam, after not so great tournament, did well. She scored 48 of 53 balls. But I would like to talk about Bhuchatam. I just read a tweet from Hypocost, which says in the tours to Southern Africa this particular year, she's taken 48 wickets at an average of 10. Like, that's insane. For a player at an average of 10, you're taking 48 wickets only this particular year, with most of the matches not even given one-day international status for that matter.
Yeah, I think, I said it at the beginning of the tournament that she would be one to watch. She is, in my mind, whatever I've seen of her and, whatever little interactions I've had with her, she comes across as a very, very smart bowler. She knows exactly what she needs to do, what her plans are, and she's very meticulous in the way she prepares for what she does. So not at all surprised that she's been that successful. I remember ahead of the T20 World Cup, even at that point, she was, I think, the highest wicket taker between 2019 and the T20 World Cup. So she's been extremely successful through her T20 and list day careers, I suppose. And she's one of the stalwarts in that Thailand dressing room. They all look up to her and kind of follow in her lead. So she's just an amazing player, and it's unfortunate that we won't see her at a World Cup or in the ODI Championship. She is one of the older players, so how long she'll continue and how much we'll see of her at the international stage is the question.
And the second thing about Pakistan-Zimbabwe match, again, a demolishing win for Pakistan. But I'm more concerned about this Pakistan batting lineup, because if they're scoring 150s and 190s against Thailand and Zimbabwe, what is something that's going to happen when they face Australia and England in literally 3 months' time?
Yeah, I think that's a question that a lot of us are asking. You look at that Pakistan lineup and they shouldn't be scoring only 180 or 140 or 190. There's so much talent in that lineup. Think of Muniba Ali, Omema Sohail has been talked up so much. It's just really difficult to see, why they're getting the scores that they are. I think in that, particularly yesterday in that game against Zimbabwe, a lot of them just threw away their wickets. Think of Muniba Ali, got herself in. She looked extremely good, threw away her wicket. Iram Javed came in, struck a few boundaries, threw away her wicket. Nidadar, was putting together a partnership, got out at a difficult time. So it feels like Pakistan for so long have relied so heavily on the likes of Maroof, on Javeria Khan, on Nidadar, that the younger players still haven't found a way to kind of lift themselves out of getting those 30s or 20s. And this will be a very challenging time for them, for the likes of Muniba, for the likes of Omema, to kind of find a way to convert those starts, because they are getting consistent starts. It's been just about, converting those and allowing the likes of Alia Riaz to come out and play more expansively, because right now it feels like, the top order fail, and then Riyaz and Dar come back in the back end and lift them to a decent total. So they have a lot to work on. And the annoying thing about them is they have so much talent but just haven't been able to convert. So hopefully the 2022 World Cup isn't just as disappointing as 2017, because that was a very, very difficult tournament for Pakistan. I feel like this team is a lot better than the 2017 team. So hopefully they're able to pick themselves up and do a lot better there, because they definitely need the batters to stand up.
Pakistan definitely needs a lot of batters to stand out. The selectors need to now look in about who are those attacking players, how the batting order has to shuffle. The coach has a lot to do in the next 3 months. But that is with Pakistan. We'll sign off with something about Ireland. Ananya, I read a thread. Most of the Ireland players are not contracted. And if you want to have a series every 4 months, nearly now, because they'll be playing in the ICC Women's ODI Championship, they'll be playing at least 9 series in the next 3 years. That means 3 series a year. They'll be on the ground nearly every time. So there are a lot of factors to be considered when you do that. All the players should be contracted. That's A. You need to create that backup chain, because if certain players get injured, they're tired, you need to have multiple players coming up in the ranks. What should be the strategy, the focus now from Cricket Ireland? That there are going to be so many matches that they're going to play just all of a sudden.
Look, I think a lot of what we're asking for comes down to funding, and how much funding Cricket Ireland have to then invest into their women's team. I think obviously qualifying for the ICC ODI Championship gives the board incentive to say, hey, we know exactly when you're going to play, what you're going to play, and how much you're going to play, and therefore it allows them to, I suppose, better push their resources into areas that require it. Of course, the players do need, it would be wonderful if all the players were contracted, because again, to compete more consistently against the top ranked teams, they will be competing against full-time professionals. So, which means, I know we're talking about this as a learning opportunity or a growing opportunity for a team like Ireland, but it's also the fact that they will need to then, actually push these teams to be taken seriously, because, I read a thread before we came on the show about how Ireland, again, played in 2018. They were 3 of their biggest ODI defeats in the history of women's cricket. So, you don't want people to go back and look at those kind of things, because I know for a fact that Ireland a lot of fingers have been pointed at them saying, do they really deserve to make it? Are they really better than Thailand? Look, that's something we will never know at this point. It's not their fault that they've been put into the ODI Championship. It's not the fault of the players. It's not the fault of the team. It's the administrators who've kind of bungled up and done this. And we have to live with it and not point the players and say, you don't deserve to be where you are. I think deserve is a big word. So they've made it to where they are for various reasons. And I think it will be great if, I think under Ed Joyce, Ireland have improved tremendously in terms of, just their approach, the way they're batting, the way they're bowling, and the way they've been fielding in T20 cricket. I'm sure he, having been involved in county cricket in England, playing a lot of international cricket for England and Ireland, will bring in a lot of experience and understanding of how the team needs to move forward. And they have a lot of young players that I'm sure will grow rapidly, over the next few years. So as to how Cricket Ireland are going to move forward, I don't know. I feel like it all comes down to funding and how they figure out where they want their resources to go. So it will be an interesting time for all these teams, but just happy that at least we've expanded the ICC ODI Championship to 10 teams now. It will be wonderful if by some miracle we can get it to 12 by April.
So miracle is all that we want. Now Bangladesh, West Indies and Pakistan will join India, Australia, England, South Africa and New Zealand in March. the next year for the World Cup. From April of next year, we will see the ICC Women's ODI Championship, Sri Lanka and Ireland to compete with these 8 teams in about 9 series. Every team plays in the next 3 years for the 2025 Cricket World Cup. That's what we have from here at Mutual Fund Sahi Hai, the outside view powered by Fantasy Akhada. We will join you soon for something more exciting.
डायरेक्ट प्लान
म्यूचुअल फंड में खुद से इन्वेस्ट करने का ये एक ऑप्शन है, इससे कमीशन बच जाता है।
अरे यार जस्सी मुझे बताना।
डायरेक्ट प्लान में सोच समझ कर इन्वेस्ट कर तो ही फायदा है।
सही है। तेरी इतना भारी बैग।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।